In the early morning hours, a gang broke into a warehouse near London, expecting to find a few £1 million in cash. Instead, they found 3 tons of pure gold. In a matter of minutes, they pulled off the biggest robbery in British history. But the gold would prove to be more dangerous than they could ever imagine. Almost everyone who touched it would face ruin, betrayal, or death. They called it the crime of the century. This is the story of the Brinks robbery. Welcome to Curio Hour, where we uncover the strange, the unsolved, and the unforgettable. Today's story: the Brinks robbery. It was the 26th of November, 1983. Near London's Heathrow Airport stood a high-security warehouse belonging to a company called Brinks. The company specialized in storing and transporting valuables. Cash, jewelry, and precious metals passed through its doors on their way to and from the airport. The building was protected by alarms, heavy doors, and security guards. It was meant to be one of the safest places in Britain to keep something of great value. On that particular night, the vault held an extraordinary cargo: crates of gold bullion waiting to be flown abroad. In total, almost 3.5 tons of gold. Its value in 1983 was around £26 million. Today, that same gold would be worth hundreds of millions. It was a fortune almost beyond imagining. But the gold was not supposed to be the target. The gang that struck Brinks that night did not even know it was there. They had come for something else entirely. They had come for cash. Their information told them the warehouse held a few £1 million in currency, an enormous prize on its own. The gold would be a staggering, accidental bonus. The robbery was an inside job. One of the security guards at the warehouse was a man named Anthony Black. And Anthony Black had a dangerous connection. His sister was married to a man named Brian Robinson, a seasoned and respected figure in the London criminal underworld. Robinson saw an opportunity, and he took it. Through Black, the gang gained the most valuable thing any robber can have: knowledge from the inside. The layout, the alarms, the schedules, and the keys. Black provided a key to the main door and detailed information about how the security worked. With that, the gang could walk straight into one of Britain's most secure buildings. The man who led the actual raid was Mickey McAvoy, a hardened and feared armed robber. He assembled a small professional crew for the job. The plan was simple and brutal. Get inside before dawn, overpower the guards, force them to open the vault, and take the cash. They expected to be in and out quickly. In the early hours of that November morning, the gang moved. Using the inside knowledge, they slipped into the warehouse and seized control before anyone could react. The guards on duty were caught completely by surprise. The robbers were masked and ruthless, and they meant to get what they had come for, no matter what. To force the guards to cooperate, the gang used terrifying methods. They poured petrol over one of the men and threatened to set him alight if the codes were not given. Faced with such terror, the guards gave up the combinations to the vault. The robbers opened the heavy doors, expecting to find their stacks of cash. But what they saw stopped them in their tracks. Box after box, crate after crate of solid gold bullion. Far more than any cash they had ever dreamed of stealing. For a moment, the gang could hardly believe it. They had stumbled into a fortune in gold. But 3.5 tons is an enormous weight, and they had to move fast. They loaded the gold into a waiting van, box by heavy box, working against the clock. The metal was so heavy that the van's suspension sagged under the load. And then they were gone, vanishing into the dawn with a treasure that would haunt Britain for decades. The whole raid had taken only a couple of hours. When the police arrived, they were stunned by the scale of it. 26 million pounds in gold gone. It was the largest robbery the country had ever seen. But now the gang faced a problem far harder than the robbery itself. They had 3 tons of stolen gold. And gold, unlike cash, cannot simply be spent. Every bar of bullion was marked and traceable. To turn the gold into usable money, the gang would have to melt it down, disguise its origin, and quietly sell it back into the market. For that, they needed help. They turned to a man who would become central to the whole saga. A wealthy and well-connected criminal named Kenneth Noy. Noy had the contacts to launder the gold. He arranged for it to be melted down, mixed with other metals, and sold through legitimate-looking channels with the help of a network of associates. The scheme was vast. Millions of pounds began flowing through bank accounts and front companies. The dirty gold was slowly being turned into clean, untraceable wealth. So much cash was moving that it reportedly caused a noticeable spike in deposits at certain banks. The sheer volume of money was almost impossible to hide. Investigators later said that the Brinks gold transformed the British underworld. The fortune it generated was reinvested into drugs, property, and other crimes, spreading like a stain. It became known as the robbery that paid for itself again and again. The money multiplied, funding new criminal empires across London and beyond. But all that money also drew attention. The police knew the gold had to be going somewhere. And slowly, painstakingly, they began to follow the trail. The first breakthrough came quickly, through the inside man. Investigators realized that the gang had detailed knowledge of the warehouse, and suspicion fell on the guard, Anthony Black. Black cracked under questioning. He confessed his role and named the men behind the raid. His testimony led to the arrest of the ringleaders, including Mickey McAvoy and Brian Robinson. McAvoy and Robinson were convicted and sentenced to 25 years in prison. Justice, it seemed, had been done. But the gold itself was still missing. And the men who had organized the laundering were still free, quietly turning the bullion into cash. The police now turned their full attention to following the money. Officers began watching Kenneth Noy and his associates. They set up surveillance, following the suspects and observing the strange movements around Noy's property. Then, in January of 1985, the investigation took a deadly turn. An undercover police officer named John Fordham was watching Noy's grounds at night, hidden in the darkness. Noy discovered him. In the violent confrontation that followed, the officer was stabbed and killed. It was a shocking escalation that sent the case to a new level of seriousness. Noy was tried for the killing, but he claimed self-defense, saying he believed he was being attacked by an intruder. Astonishingly, he was acquitted of murder. However, he could not escape the gold. Noy was later convicted of handling the stolen Brinks bullion and sentenced to many years in prison. But the curse of the gold was only just beginning. Over the years, an eerie pattern emerged. A startling number of people connected to the Brinks gold met violent or untimely ends. Some were murdered in gangland killings. Others died in suspicious circumstances. The gold seemed to leave a trail of bodies wherever it went, and people spoke of it as cursed. Kenneth Noy himself would later kill again, years after his release, in a notorious road rage incident that ended in a young man's death. He was eventually convicted of that murder. The violence rippled outward for decades, touching launderers, middlemen, and associates. The robbery had unleashed something that no one could control. And through it all, one question lingered. Where had all the gold gone? Despite the arrests and the convictions, the vast majority of the bullion was never recovered. It is believed that much of the Brinks gold was melted down, disguised, and sold so thoroughly that it entered the legitimate market without a trace. Some say that anyone in Britain who bought gold jewelry in the years after 1983 may, without knowing it, be wearing a tiny piece of the Brinks haul. The gold simply melted into the world. It began as a robbery for cash and became a fortune in gold that corrupted everything it touched. Most of it was never found. The Brinks gold remains out there still, hidden in plain sight.